interviewed both candidates from an economic point of view, period. Mm-hmm. Not from education or health or nothing, just from economic. And from a policy procedure. Mm-hmm. A lot of our elected officials just don't know the policy. For example, up until 2005, 65% of all black contractors were prime contractors. Today, only 5%. There's a reason why.
Prime contractors where?
All across the United States. And when you look at Georgia, here's what happened. Today, the buzzword is subcontractor and partnering. Mm-hmm. Everybody pushing that. There was a time that we were prime contractors. You want a brick mason, you go hire William Brother Brick Mason. And that was it. He didn't have to sub or anything, but today it's sub. But the reason for that is that the state of Georgia had a policy that read like this here. You must provide a corporate surety, an individual surety bond, which means you can use your property as collateral, a money order, a cashier check, or a letter of credit. Many of the black contractors could use that property. Go to the bank and say, look, I'm going to put my property up and get a letter of credit. Today it says you must have a corporate surety. What choice do I have? That's a policy change. And when we interviewed the candidate, only one of them said that I didn't know that. That can be fixed. That's a policy fix. Got it. And so when that person says that and the other person reject that, you have to look at me as a business person. I know it directly affects me, that policy change. But also we want to remember that we would be naive to think that of all the wealth in this country, we're so inept that we can only do less than 2%. That has to be a systematic problem there, and that's because because
it's not ineptness.
We have just gotten into this the political arena. I would challenge anyone. We make up what 12 or 13% of the population. Mm-hmm. If all black, every child, everybody voted, we only make up 12%. So we don't have the ability to elect ourselves, but it makes the difference between the Republican and the Democrat. That 12% would make them, put them there. Right. And so we want to look at the policy of either one of those. And I just think that what's coming down the pike with the new administration, governor administration, I really see a lot of positive things for businesses that we've looked at. And we reach out to that. Yeah. We embrace that.
So in essence, there are some things within the new administration, in your conversation, you believe that there's some potential cracks that you can go into and make some things happen as
policy changes.
Policy changes.
And let me finish my point. I have a lot of respect for the plight of where we as a people have come through fighting through this racism. I just think about as the economies that we are heading into become digital economies, where will racism play its part in a digital economy? Where behind the computer at Spendify, you don't know exactly who that is.
Well, Spendify is not a good example because they are about black business. They are about black business.
If I start a business that is based on my ability to get into the digital space, it's a lot more difficult to limit, my access to a global market.
The issue comes to the access to capital. Don't try to get a bank loan. The issue comes to good legal representation. Mm-hmm. Go try to spend $500 an hour for an attorney.
Absolutely.
The issue comes with accounting and corporate finance and private equity and all the other things that we just don't have access to. We don't understand. We don't have the expertise, so we completely locked out.
Yep.
And the issue comes when every time somebody white dies, legacy is transferred, wealth is transferred, their trust babies being born with millions of dollars in the bank, and we start broke trying to pay for a funeral.
And you're exactly right. And I'm coming to you, but I do want to challenge us about that. Because in a lot of cases, you can get those type of insurance for $200 a month.
Right.
But hold on, but
$200 a month is a lot of money for some.
hold on. $200 a month is not a lot when you're spending $250 for some LeBrons.
Well,
No. Let's get into the retail space on things that we will do. You know, we'll pay for our hair.
I would approve.
We'll pay. You know, and here's the thing. I'm a guy. You know, of the sneaker generation. I remember when Jordans was $135. Jordans now $250.
Thinking retail, think business. It costs $2 million to start.
And I understand that. But where I'm going with that is that we want everybody to start a business, but we got people to start where they are.
Yeah.
And where people are right now is they put more focus on an $800 pair of ostrich shoes than an insurance policy, which gives them the money to have access to some resources. So when we start looking at things from both sides and say, yes, you're exactly right. But in a lot of ways, we tend to be our own enemy because of where we put our focus. We put our focus in consumerism.
5 million acres of land since 2008.
and why?
5 million acres of land, mostly
Why?
due to inheritance taxes and just not having.
Well, the inheritance tax
Well, you asked me
is
a question.
wrong.
Let me finish.
Yeah. Well, let me say
finish.
this. I'm an accountant. Most of those, they don't even have enough money to pay inheritance tax. Inheritance taxes are way up there. They're not. $1 million estate won't pay zero in inheritance taxes. So that's not a fair. That's not accurate at all.
You asked
That's
me
a
why.
conjecture.
We lost.
We lost 'cause
in
things
some cases
changed.
we sold our grandmother's
Right.
land because for the
Right.
quick money,
That's
right?
true.
And some, because we didn't value.
Who
didn't-
determines inheritance tax?
I don't.
Federal
I
government.
can't.
Federal government.
So here's where I'm going with that. Once again, that is the system. The system says, let's figure out ways to get money out of people's hands who are uneducated and don't understand the process. So we jack up the inheritance tax. How do we fix that? We got to get the right legislators in place in order to change that policy.
But inheritance taxes didn't cause black folks to lose that land. I mean, my family owns some land in LaFleur County, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
It's not at the time when my grandfather and his sisters, my great aunts, farmed that land. It was easier. They could farm that land with a tractor and mule. This is not where we live anymore. The big conglomerates use computers and equipment and mechanized equipment. They couldn't compete anymore. If I went down there to try to farm that 60-something acres of land, I couldn't compete. So it's things change. The world changes. Those labor-intensive things don't work anymore. I mean, it's not commercial. It's not profitable. All of these things, it's all, when you get down to it, it is complicated.
It's very complicated.
It's complicated. It's no one issue.
We know it's very complicated.
And then another thing we don't do that we have gone away from is unifying ourselves within our community. Just like you said, Hosea Williams, that was one of my mentors. I was railing one day about a black politician who got in tax trouble, and he had a press conference. Everybody around him was a white accountant, a white attorney. And Hosea laughed at me. He said, "Well, Richard, you know white folks ice is colder." And to blow me off, to understand that is a perception. We are victim, and then we victimize ourselves again.
I agree. So we're gonna try to we're getting short on time. And I'm gonna try to get this done. There's 3 more things I want to talk about, and I want to get this done. 3 things I want to talk about. I want to talk about the role of the traditional historic civil rights organizations in today's in bridging that gap with today's activists. I want to talk about international commerce and how we can go about getting access to that capital internationally. But one thing that we have not, because you guys have been wonderful. Our ladies have sat here and they've let us men dominate this conversation like we tend to do. And I'm going to stop that right now. one thing that we're hearing in our conversations right now are that black women believe, the narrative is becoming, black women believe that black men don't have their backs. And that's something that's it's just going around in the community. Have you guys heard that, and what sort of response do you have to that narrative?
Heard, experienced, and see. But we also have African American men who are strong. They have the back of black women. I think the problem or the question comes into the fact that, and I went back to talk about the first Miss America the other day to a young lady in my family, and I said it's because she was marketable. And because we had cash that we could buy makeup and dye our hair and do things like that, and that's why Vanessa Wiggins came about. And we were consumers in that beauty world and et cetera. But when we look at, I think the proper term is miscegenation versus miscegenation, and the percentage of just marriages, because that's a loss of respect for marriage, I think, period, in the United States, and particularly sad to say even in the church. We find, and I think you look at vital statistics, I was looking at 2015, and I may not be exact on this number, 22% of African American men did not marry African American women. And we walk into a beautiful, hot Atlanta that's African American, and we walk by beautiful sisters sitting alone, 2 or 3, and we see brothers with other races. So when you see that, and then you start watching television, and if I say it to a brother, they usually say, yeah, but look at Whoopi Goldberg. I say, what about her? Look at the girls that play tennis.
Venus and Serena.
Yeah. And I say, well, you remember the comments that some folk made about Venus and Serena, who are African-American men? You look at the NBA, so many of them who they marry, football players and et cetera. So what we're seeing, and because we're visual people and we're looking at media, we're looking at magazines, we're looking at television, I'm looking at the AME church even, and we see more and more African-American men choosing other races of women and profiling black women.
I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna push back a little bit on that.
Okay.
So if 22% of black men are not marrying black women, African-American women, that means 78% are.
Of course.
Right?
And it's growing larger every year. The percentage is getting bigger and bigger every year.
But here's the thing.
One more
go
thing.
ahead.
And 67% of African American children are born out of wedlock. And by the time we are 30 years old, our chances of getting married usually is so slim we'll be hit by a UFO first. So we are devalued. We are devalued in the American society.
This is a good cut because I'm coming to you, Tamara. But I guess my concern about the dialogue around interracial relationships are that if we look at some of our strongest black leaders, a lot of them were interracial relationships, right? So I'm always of the mindset of
and a lot of them cut deals as to the reason why we're economically behind right now. Let's get on down to the facts.
Well, there's a lot of folks with black wives and black husbands, they cutting them deals too, so I don't think that has anything to do with race.
So we may as well not even talk about race then.
Right.
We may as well just talk about, let's get busy, let's save our money, let's teach some values, let's teach our children to respect authority, and let's build some businesses. Because we're going to talk about race, let's talk about race.
No, we can talk about race. I think the conversation of interracial relationships is complicated, right? Because
all of these conversations are complicated.
they're all complicated.
But they're narrated into a narrow.
But the problem is that if we're looking at what NFL ball players, NBA ball players, people on television
African-American preachers.
If we're looking at that as being, and not looking at the man or the people beside you in your community and knowing that that's that 78%, a lot of times with that 78%, I think that it's kind of doing us a disservice.
They're buying it because it's okay. And we happen to have, and it's been going on since time immemorial, when we see people in certain positions, then it's okay. But I get a lot of pushback from black men just like you. When I start talking about that.
Well, let me just tell, and let me tell you why a black person like me, because one of my mothers, I have 3. I have my birth mother, I have my stepmother, and I have my mother-in-law, and my stepmother is white, and my mother-in-law is biracial. And so the point is right. And so you're not the beautiful woman that you are without being biracial. But my point is that it's all about marry who you want to marry, love who you want to love, but bring your culture to the
Well,
party.
spend your money
That's-
where you want to, vote for who you want to.